quick side note before the video begins. If you're wondering why you're watching footage of the Star Wars Holiday Special, it's my attempt to bypass the copyright gods that are YouTube, Disney, and Lucasfilm in regards to anything even remotely related to Star Wars. Since the Star Wars Holiday Special seems to be the one thing in all of the galaxy that neither Disney nor Lucasfilm will touch, much less acknowledge its existence, I'm doing this experiment to see if that will be the case. So if you have never seen the Star Wars Holiday Special before, then prepare to be thoroughly entertained and completely bewildered while you watch my video of What's So Special About Star Wars. Star Wars, the gold standard in modern science fiction. What started as a small dream for an up-and-coming director exploded into a behemoth of epic stories, classic characters, and a universe as big as our very own Milky Way. But what is it about this galaxy far, far away that has so enthralled audiences for so long? What has Star Wars got that has entrenched itself into the subconscious of modern culture the world over? This is Maddox Works, bringing you another What's So Special video. The success and love for Star Wars is a combination of many different factors. The first movie came out during the right time in entertainment, and the script was handled and treated with a seriousness not usually afforded to space fiction stories at that time. It also helped that the creator of the franchise, George Lucas, surrounded himself with a talented team to bring his vision to life. The first movie, then simply titled Star Wars, was released on May 25, 1977, to a mere 32 theaters. The movie was a shocking success and quickly expanded its run across more theater houses during its box office, life, and subsequent re-releases. One of the major elements that helped Star Wars reach such high enthusiasm was due to recent sci-fi movies released around the same time or right before, which were given similar treatment in terms of the tone of the story and audience reception. The original Star Trek TV series predates Star Wars by about 11 years, its original airing being from 1966 to 1969. Debuting to a mixed reaction, Star Trek quickly found a home in syndication after its first run, which would later launch the franchise into stardom and success in the future. Star Trek was among the first in science fiction to feature a cast of core characters not entirely human. Up until that point in entertainment, sci-fi entertainment nearly always had an exclusively human cast of core characters. Star Trek also introduced the concept, at least in motion picture form, of united trade and alliances between different worlds and races, an idea Star Wars would perfect in the future. 2001: A Space Odyssey, directed by the great Stanley Kubrick, was released in 1968, also to mixed audience reaction. Like Star Trek, A Space Odyssey would go on to develop a following after its release, and the movie is now considered a benchmark of both science fiction and cinema in general. A Space Odyssey brought to the table how big and operatic science fiction stories could be, without being over the top or corny, also an element Star Wars would perfect. A Space Odyssey also introduced audiences to the concept of AI as a computer program, fully running and operating a system, rather than just a simple robot, as was seen in Forbidden Planet. George Lucas himself said that 2001: A Space Odyssey was one of his inspirations for Star Wars. With these forerunners making a name for themselves with the public and planting the seeds of what would be seen on a grander scale in Star Wars, the time was fast approaching for George Lucas to show his magnum opus to the world. Another thing that set Star Wars apart from other science fiction movies of the time, and endeared itself to its audience, was the grandness of the story, and the literal universe of lore that George Lucas and his team created. This is due in large part to the inspiration Lucas sought out when writing down the plot for the franchise. Star Wars is often called a space opera, not in the literal sense of a musical, but in the scope and scale of its production and story. When writing the outline and basic lore for the franchise, Lucas took inspiration from just about everything he could get his hands on, from the great stories of Greek and Roman literature, like the Odyssey and the Iliad, to the all-is-one and yin and yang balance philosophies of Taoism and Confucius, Lucas scoured through the beliefs and traditions of stories and cultures from all over the world. But it wasn't just religions Lucas gleaned inspiration from. Being a filmmaker, he turned to the classics of the screen as well as of literature to help flesh out the visual narrative aspect of Star Wars. As previously stated, 2001: A Space Odyssey, as well as Forbidden Planet, released in 1956, and the Star Trek series helped influence Lucas both visually as well as musically. Lucas also looked to the legendary Japanese filmmaker Akira Kurosawa, and took inspiration from his movies when it came to certain plot points in the original Star Wars trilogy, and certain visual elements and scene shots scattered throughout the franchise. World War I and World War II documentaries were also deeply influential to the franchise when it came to depicting the space dogfights and ground combat in the original trilogy. For literary inspiration, Lucas looked to none other than J.R.R. Tolkien's epic masterpiece, The Lord of the Rings, as well as the Arthurian stories, Frank Herbert's Dune series, and various DC and Marvel comics. All of this makes it sound like the franchise would end up being a Frankenstein mess, comprised of Japanese, Christian, and Greek traditions, spliced together with Western and samurai movie influences, crossed with shots pulled right out of a World War II dogfight documentary, and colored with archetypes from Tolkien and Frank Herbert. Yet for as wild and varied as the creation of Star Wars was, it worked. The story was different enough to be new, yet had enough familiar narratives and visual aspects that audiences could connect with, thus drawing them deeper into the world and the characters in it. Combined with the right actors, visual effects artists, composer, and director, Star Wars opened the galactic door to a whole new universe of ideas and possibilities for the science fiction genre for generations to come. Much like Middle-earth, the world of Star Wars has a far-flung arm of influence, and the love for the franchise has found its way into the most unlikely of places. But that's another story for another time. This is Maddox Works, and I'll see y'all next time.